Hello, welcome to Pod Up. My name is Carol Miller, and today we will be breaking down the timeless Telltale Heart. One of the many short stories Edgar Allan Poe wrote was The Telltale Heart, which in itself already has sort of an unsettling or eerie connotation. Spoiler alert, it is. The story begins with the narrator himself assuring the reader, insisting, really, that he is in fact perfectly sane. However, he then starts to almost unravel as he's actually confessing to a murder that he committed solely because of the victim's evil eye. Edgar Allan Poe didn't have the greatest of upbringings due to the early loss of his parents and a rather strained relationship with his alcoholic foster father. These are the things that shape you into who you are, so despite his rather harsh background, his emotional landscape wouldn't have been the same and therefore have a huge impact on his works. He was also born on January 19th, 1809. A Capricorn, no wonder he was so unemotional and unwaveringly focused. Anyways, let's jump to some historical context and lay down the land in which Mr. Poe was brought up. Poe was born when relations across the Atlantic between the United States and Great Britain began to quickly fall apart, leading to the War of 1812. Edgar was primarily raised in Richmond, Virginia, which was greatly affected by the British when they blockaded the Chesapeake Bay. We see more societal foundations moving on later in the mid-18th to early 19th century, when he created the Telltale Heart. Many things could have inspired different fragments of his short story, including heavily stigmatized mental health, popular superstitions, and even an actual crime that occurred. The narrator in Poe's short story resembles how an actual mental disorder was not taken seriously as a health condition at all during this time. It also accurately demonstrates 19th century attitudes that often viewed mental disorders with a mix of fear, ignorance, and moral judgment. There are many hints to superstitions that were around during this time. However, one of them was the evil eye, which is a worldwide superstition that is believed can inflict curses from just an envious glance. Some also believe that this can be seen as a near homophone for I, the letter I, suggesting that the eye symbolizes the narrator's own inner evil, as an evil eye. Whenever you think of Salem, Massachusetts, you think of the Salem witch trials, which occurred in the 16th century. Now, you'll be thinking about how Edgar Allan Poe was actually born in the same state, and how it was also the land where Joseph White was brutally murdered. Captain White was a very wealthy man who disinherited his grandnephew, Joseph J. Knapp. He was shortly found brutally murdered in his bed. Knapp had a convincing motive. Captain White was an 83-year-old man, and you can likely assume the rest. In Poe's short story, the narrator explains how he chopped up the old man's body and hid it underneath the floorboards of his house after smothering him with his own bed mattress, which is pretty similar to the story of Captain Joseph White. Now, as we've gone on, we can definitely see the eerie, gory, and strange side of the Telltale Heart, but these themes are also seen in Poe's around 70 short stories and around 50 poems. All of them reflect the darker side of human experiences and the overall era of Gothic literature, which I would consider Poe to be the father or even the god of at this point. Many different works of literature contributed to this grotesque period, and some examples that you might have heard of yourself include Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Dracula by Bram Stoker, and The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. Alright, that'll be all for today's episode of Pod Up. The Telltale Heart is not just a tale of straight up madness, it's an actual snapshot of a time when real people were questioning the very nature of what sanity actually is. If you want more literary deep dives like this, don't forget to hit subscribe and, keep an eye on your floorboards. You never know who's listening or what. I'll see you next time.